I'm standing on the Odakomori Observatory overlooking Matsushima Bay in Japan. On Friday, the 11th of March 2011 at 2:46 p.m, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck 70 kilometers that way.
This was the largest earthquake in the recorded history in Japan. It was so massive, it shifted the Earth on its axes by 10 centimeters.
It set off a wave of tsunamis that hit the coastline and then rolled inland.
The surge penetrated up to 5 kilometers with waves of up to 10 meters, decimating everything in its path.
And about 100 kilometers that way, the Fukushima prefecture was about to become a tragically familiar name to the rest of the world.
Today, March the 11th, or 3/11, is Japan's 9/11, the date it will never forget. 3/11 taught this country an unforgettable lesson. Rebuild cities as smarter cities, or risk another unthinkable disaster. Five years after its deadliest seismic disaster, Japan has a new strategy for rebuilding its cities. And they are doing it the smart way.
I'm Jason Pomeroy, and in this episode of Smart Cities, I'm visiting Higashimatsushima, 3/11's ground zero. I'm in what used to be Nobiru Station here in Higashimatsushima, and what's remarkable is that all of this would have been completely underwater on 3/11.
Now it stands next to the 3/11 Disaster Museum, a poignant reminder of what happened that day and the days that followed.
65% of Higashimatsushima was devastated by flooding, more than any other city in Japan. Over 15,000 people were evacuated and over 1,100 people lost their lives. In certain parts of this city, it took 5 months to re-establish electricity. So what were the biggest issues facing this city after the tsunami?
一番困ったのはライフラインが全部ストップした状態になってます。それで食べ物ほかあと通信手段もすぐダメになってしまったので連絡取れない状況になって。で避難場所とか用意はされてたんですけれどもそことの連絡がうまく取れない状態になってますんで避難された方の安否情報とかその他の情報をうまく集めることができなくて。
Hard, especially for those who lost someone.
うちは丘で働いていて、女房は海の近くにいたもんで、あと女房は小学校に避難する時に津波に車で避難したんだけどもそれは間に合わなくて車ごとに飲まれてしまいました。2日ぐらい探したがね津波の後に2日ぐらい探して小学校で避難したとこを見つけた時は亡くなっていました。
As Higashimatsushima mourned its dead and tackled the massive cleanup, its people vowed that they would not be caught unprepared again should there be another major natural disaster. And that meant finding smarter ways to ensure an uninterrupted energy supply when future earthquakes and tsunamis struck. Across Japan, 311 changed the way both ordinary people and policymakers thought about smart cities and energy. And one person who has studied this shift in thinking is Professor Andrew de Witt.
So Professor de Witt, tell me, the cataclysmic effects of 311, what effect does that have on government policy on smart cities and energy?
Well, you got two events, right? You've got a natural disaster and you've got a nuclear disaster. And so you have to separate 311, it seems to me. You have to separate the two.
Before 311, Japan relied mostly on nuclear power, natural gas and coal to produce electricity. But this reliance changed overnight.
As a result of 311, you have an almost immediate withdrawal from nuclear, meaning 30% of Japan's power generation capacity very quickly shut down to zero. Bounces around, you know, up. Right now we're back to 2 or 3 reactors running. However, the nuclear disaster discredited nuclear.
Right.
And greatly encourages the diffusion of renewable energy.
Okay, so
greatly encourages public acceptance. But the second critical event in 311 is the natural disaster, which puts a great deal of attention on resilience towards natural disasters. And that fosters a great deal of collaboration, you know, across central agencies, the government central agencies, horizontal collaboration, as well as reaching out to civil society, academia, business sector, and so forth. So you have actually a very profound restructuring of the way Japanese government operates.
One key change was energy deregulation. Today, instead of relying on the 10 utility companies who enjoyed a monopoly within their territories, cities and communities can start their own local power initiatives.
One of the reasons Higashimatsushima is such an important thing to look at is getting out of over-reliance on fossil fuels without returning to nuclear means you've got to put a whole bunch of renewable generation capacity in place in a real hurry. And that seems to be what the city has accomplished.
Local energy independence is a lesson that Higashimatsushima learned the hard way. Now, from solar energy to wind to biomass, the city is exploring ways to use more renewable energy. But is that enough to make the city smart? Energy. We can't live our lives without it, and yet we take it for granted. Until it's suddenly gone. Hidenori Kimura is the administrative director of Senseki Hospital in Higashimatsushima. He found out the hard way what it's like to be without energy when power was cut off during the 311 earthquake. The hospital had to rely on a generator for electricity then.
どちらかというと本当に自家発電でも最小限の発電の内容にしないといつこの給油が来るかという心配がございましたんで、診療行為はまずできませんでした。震災後薬が必要な方の受診をするのがに徹してたという状況でございます。
The lesson was clear. When there is a power shutdown, patients may die. Full power was restored after 5 days, but during that time, without enough electricity to power its equipment, Senseki Hospital had to send its more serious cases to other hospitals which still had power. To become more resilient in the future, the hospital has now turned to another source of power, the Higashimatsushima disaster-prepared smart ecotown. This is a project developed by Sekisui, one of Japan's largest real estate developers.
So Mikuni-san, what makes ecotown so unique in Japan?
そうですね、ここは災害公営住宅として作ったんですけども、一つはソーラーで発電した電気を このエリアの中で地産地消している再生可能エネルギーの地産地消のマイクログリッドを持っているということが一つ大きな特徴です。
Higashimatsushima's eco-town represents one of Japan's first microgrid communities. It generates and stores the energy it consumes locally. 70 houses, 15 apartments, 4 hospitals, and 1 public building are plugged into a solar microgrid, which is controlled by a community energy management system. Solar panels in the community generate energy, which is then distributed back to the local grid and stored in a giant on-site battery.
あともう一つは東日本大震災のような災害の時に、電気が切れた、そういう時にこのエリアの中だけはマイクログリッドがあるので3日間は普通の電気が使えます。それ以降はソーラーと蓄電池で、電気だけは確保できるようなそういうふうなシステムを持っています。
All in all, the town produces 50% of all the electricity it needs and buys the other 50% from the traditional power grid. And the smartest thing about this microgrid? Well, it's owned and managed by the city of Higashimatsushima. Possible only because of energy deregulation laws that came into effect in 2016.
So what we have here is a schematic diagram to show the energy paths throughout the whole of the eco-town. What I can see here is that it's in real time. These energy readings are fluctuating according to the energy being generated and also consumed. So what happens when the power cuts out?
その時は、ここの電気がシャットダウンして系統が止まります。その時ここの非常発電機が動きます。非常発電機と太陽光、この蓄電池、この3つを使ってここへ供給するようになっていきます。でそこの管理に関してはこちらの画面の方で、赤が運転中であったり緑が止まったっていうのが分かるようになってますので、これで管理を行っていきます。
Local ownership, local management. This is best seen in HOPE, the Higashimatsushima Organization for Progress, Economy, Education and Energy. Established with participation from both citizens and city government, this organization not only manages eco-town, but other rebuilding efforts across Higashimatsushima. And it's these elements that set it apart from other smart city projects, according to Professor Yasuo Utsumi, who has been studying smart cities across Japan.
So what kind of smart city is Higashimatsushima? How does it differentiate itself from other smart cities in Japan?
One of the important issues is the local community drives this smart city. The other smart cities in Japan, the local body, Yokohama City, for example, and or the private companies, the very big private companies drive the smart city.
Okay.
And they supply all the systems. But here, it's based on the agreement of the inhabitant people. That is an important thing.
That's interesting. The people, the community, are in control of their own destiny, really.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
What does a smart city mean to those who run it? Is it community? Is it technology? After the break, I find out from the mayor of Higashimatsushima himself, Hideo Abe.
When the greatest earthquake that has hit Japan struck on 3/11, it set off a series of tsunamis that penetrated inland, covering 65% of Higashimatsushima city. And this red line pretty much maps out the area that the water penetrated.
More than 10,000 homes were destroyed and over 1 million tons of rubble was generated. But what's amazing is that 97% of that debris was recycled and used for reconstruction projects across the city. Projects like this coastal embankment built to prevent future tsunamis from causing havoc. "3/11 taught Mayor Abe a powerful lesson. In coastal Japan, a smart city is a city built to survive a catastrophic seismic event.
一般的には温室効果ガス CO2 を削減するということが本来でありますけれども、自然災害の多い国、日本のような国は防災減災に必要な取り組みだというふうに確信を持っております。
The tidal embankment is just one component of the city's disaster resilience plan. Another new initiative is the Kazuna Solar Park.
So how much energy is generated in this solar field?
ここに14,616枚のパネルで2メガの約600世帯の電気を1年間賄うことができます。
Are you exploring other methods of renewable energy generation?
ここでは太陽光パネルですけれども、市内では風力による発電、あるいはバイオマス、すべてをあらゆるソースを上手に利用しながら、それぞれの欠点を補いながら自然エネルギーで賄っていきたいなと考えています。
So has solar generation overtaken conventional methods of energy generation?
まだ市全体では大きな電気会社から購入している電気が多いんですけれども、全部で15,000世帯のうちの600世帯ですので、まだまだこれからというところですね。
Slowly but surely, Mayor Abe is preparing his city to be ready for the next big natural disaster. Beyond Eco-Town, other local districts in Higashimatsushima are being rebuilt to have a degree of power independence.
そういった中ではここの柳の目地区にですね、こちらですね、スマート防災エコタウンを事業として進みましたけども、他にもミニですけどもこのようにほとんど太陽光パネルここにもありますけども、皆さんこうした再生可能エネルギーもうミニですけどもこういった取り組みをしている。それは東日本大震災で命を守ること、あるいは情報を途切れなく皆さんから世界から情報を入手するということでは、電源というのは命綱インフラだなというのを思ったので、こういった取り組みをしている。できればこれからもこういった取り組みができたらなというふうに思っています。
Destroyed in one day, the city of Higashimatsushima has been busy rebuilding itself ever since.
Yet, despite the 5 years that have passed since the cataclysmic events of 3/11, we still find approximately 1,000 households living in temporary housing.
ほぼインフラとかは早めに整備が進んだので、そちらの方は安心して生活できる状態にはなってます。ただしまだ新しい家に移られてない方、移ってもそこのコミュニティがうまく形成されないためにいろんな諸問題とかも起きてますので、その部分はちょっとまだ不安な部分とかもあります。
震災後復旧してきていますが、全然何も手がつけられていないところもありますし、今後もう少し早く復旧してくれればいいなと思っています。
But one base at a time, the city and the community here have been rebuilding itself to normalcy.
Well, it's not exactly rugby, which is my sport. I've never seen a baseball match, but this is fantastic. And what better way to build a sense of community?
Higashimatsushima recognizes that rebuilding itself as a smart city means more than rebuilding with new technologies. It also means piecing together a shattered community's way of life. And as my friend Saskia Sassen would argue, this is essential to making any city smart.
Hi Saskia.
Hi Jay.
Greetings from an absolutely freezing Japan. This smart city seems to be slightly lighter on the technology and quite community focused. What do you think?
I think we started out with being obsessed with technical systems. And now we have a more intermediated, and that means a messier concept of what is a smart city, because we want to bring in people. Sort of a line that I like to use is that there is no smart city if it does not mobilize the intelligences of all its people.
Okay, so is a ground-up approach the correct approach to planning a smart city?
My take, just at the very general level, is that we need both approaches. We do need some to mobilize, to insert some very powerful systems that you could describe as top-down. But they have to also, any city needs to be aware of what its people are thinking, liking, what they want, and sort of to deploy those applications, those new little tech interventions that could really help the bottom, if you want.
Okay, thanks, Asya.
Great talking.
Bye. Sayonara.
The smart city model Higashimatsushima has developed, one of energy independence, may be a model not just for Japan, but for the world. And before I leave the city, I catch up with Andrew DeWitt one last time.
How applicable is Higashimatsushima as a case study for the rest of the world?
Well, if you think about developing Africa, would it be good for them to urbanize on the, the old sort of North American, European, Chinese model of, centralized generation and large-scale grids? Or would it be better for them to urbanize on the basis of microgrids and decentralized power? If you think it would be better to do the latter because of its inherent efficiencies, equity, the ability to drastically increase your energy efficiency, which is better?
Yes.
Which is more applicable, yes. More advisable for the world as it is and is to come? I think the answer is pretty easy, I think.
So what have I learned from this smart city? Well, smart cities aren't always about newfangled technologies to try and make our lives easier. They're equally about resilience, particularly in the wake of a natural disaster like 3/11. Here in Higashimatsushima, what we've seen is a smart grid that can offer self-sustenance to a complete community. And when we think about community, it is also about their own resilience, the bonds of association between a people to actually overcome such issues. Hopefully the lessons learned here can actually inform countries and their cities in the wake of natural disasters in the future.